My name is Leilani Thatcher, a tour guide at the Library of Lost Things. This is The Doorstep Project, episode 34, Lucky. Today we're going over an old exhibit still in the museum. The actual exhibit is a small mirrored room. Outside the doorway is this plaque with this story on it. My mom used to call me Lucky. I never understood why. My mom and I were in between homeless shelters for almost 3 years in my childhood, then living with my grandparents for 2 years before finding a small house off in a nowhere town. My mom found a job in a nearby city working nights in a hotel. I was 13 by then and mostly numb to my life. I went through middle school and high school quietly, working when I could. My mom's biggest gift to me was an old junker car, lots of problems, but it got me to and from the city, and one of the mechanics in town would fix it for free. And every morning, when I left for school and my mom was coming back from work, she would hug me and whisper, "My lucky girl." And I never knew what she meant. I didn't feel very lucky. Every teenager believes that they live the worst life, that they are the most pitiful, and I was no different. After all, I lived in a nowhere town, eating ramen for dinner and granola bars for breakfast. I packed my own lunch, set my own alarms, and even signed my own permission slips. When I got sick, I took my own temperature, called the school myself, and made my own chicken soup. And when my mom got sick, I did the same for her. And every day, my mom called me lucky. It used to make me angry. I tried not to show her how mad I was, but sometimes I would explode at her and tell her all the things that made me unlucky. I always felt bad afterwards. It wasn't her fault, really. She was trying her best to make our life work. I moved out when I was 19, when I finally had enough money to move to an apartment in the city. And then 10 years later, I'd saved up to go to college studying computer science. My mom and I didn't talk much at that point. I called her on her birthday and Mother's Day, and I would visit for Christmas when I could. When I was 32, I got married. It was a small wedding, a few friends from college, coworkers, and my mother. His family came as well, but they weren't supportive of our relationship. It was that day that my perspective began to change. I knew my husband's family was not involved much in his life, but I learned firsthand how dismissive they were after our wedding. I never met his grandma. She declined to come to the wedding, and when she passed, my husband was not informed until after the funeral. His brother didn't invite us to his wedding and was surprised when we actually came. When his younger sister graduated high school, she told him not to come, not because she didn't want him there, but because her mother forbade our presence at a family event. The worst was when I had our first baby. We don't speak with his family anymore. They have never met our second child, and they never will. My lucky girl. I wasn't lucky because I lived a perfect life or had a perfect family, not because I lived a fulfilling childhood. I was lucky because there was always someone to help my mom and I. In all those programs and homeless shelters, the staff were always there to help us. As hard as it was to live with my grandparents, my grandma would play with me when my mom was busy, and grandpa helped me with my homework. Even out in a nowhere town, we had support. We had a mechanic who fixed our cars for free, and neighbors who brought me food every Sunday night. And the local church always invited us to Christmas parties and Easter brunch, even though they knew my mom would never make it. Even on my birthday, though I had no close friends, the whole church would sign a card, and the neighbors would show up with cake and cookies. My lucky girl. She wasn't referring to my life, but to my family. Not my father, who I never met. Not my grandparents, who, as they grew older, were often neglectful and harsh. No siblings, no cousins to speak of. Rather, the people who showed me what it meant to grow up. It's true, it really does take a village to raise a child, and everywhere I was, I had a village. I had a family. My lucky girl. I never call my children lucky. To this day, it kind of feels harsh and dismissive, but I often look in the mirror and think to myself, I am so lucky. At this exhibit, we often encourage our visitors to look in the mirror, really look, and say to themselves, I am so lucky. Many patrons decline to do so. Perhaps they're uncomfortable or they don't feel so lucky, and I don't blame them. It's very difficult for me to look in the mirror some days, to call myself lucky. Today, I found myself walking by this exhibit. The room is just big enough that I can stretch my arms across, and I can barely reach the sides. And standing in that little room, I feel so small and so big at the same time. For a moment, I saw myself reflected, all of me. Standing there wearing my uniform, holding a clipboard, confidence in my smile, real confidence. I'm living my dream job, telling lost stories to all of you, working in a great museum, filled with lost things that could never be recovered without the help of the staff, and in a small part, me. I have never been happier. I am so lucky. Thank you for listening to The Doorstep Project. This audio drama was created and produced by Family Friendly Podcasts. If you enjoyed the podcast, leave a rating and review on your podcast app of choice or share it with a friend. Leilani and the project will be back next week. Until then, write every day. One day your story could be in a museum. The Doorstep Project is produced by Family Friendly Podcasts. It was written, edited, and performed by AJ Barton. Sound effects for this podcast are provided by Zapsplat. Music used in this podcast includes Reawakening by Kevin McLeod, licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 license. You can learn more at his website, incompetech.com, or at creativecommons.org. Both music and sound effects have been changed and edited by AJ Barton. Links for websites, information, and contact can be found in the description of the episode. Would you like to submit your story or art to the Doorstep Project? You can find information for story submission at familyfriendlypodcast.com/The Doorstep Project. Information on CC by 4.0 licenses can be found at creativecommons.org.